Welcome to the Young and Pruitt podcast. This and every episode of this podcast is brought to you by youngandpruitt.com. If you go there, you'll see all the previous episodes, and you'll also see the Drive with Layla's blog. She's got another one coming up here real soon, and we keep adding more stuff. We're going to start doing some merchandise here soon, and slowly adding to it as we go along. If it wasn't for that website, you wouldn't be hearing us now. Hopefully you're listening to us on iTunes. If you're not, be sure to go over there, hit the subscribe button, and go ahead and hit that 5-star, and go ahead and leave us a nice review. That would be really nice. That'd be a big favor to us. On today's episode, David's not here. He's doing the college thing still. #forever at school. So he's doing his midterms, and this is his last semester, I think. So hopefully that'll be all out of the way, and hopefully he passes and he doesn't have to do it again. But let's wish him all good luck. Tweet him at TallGuyTurbo on Twitter and Instagram, and let him know that you're wishing him good luck. Since David isn't here, I put out the bat signal, and my buddy Lou Tomarchio, who's been a longtime friend. I've known him since I moved down here when I was at Pitt. He's been a longtime guy in racing. He's been an interior guy. He's been a mechanic, and he's been on a pit crew. Say hello.
Hello, ladies and gents.
Yeah. Lou's from New Jersey. How's a kid from New Jersey, from Hoboken, New Jersey, find his way down into NASCAR country?
I don't know. I don't even know how it happened to begin with myself. I guess it just started with wanting to race to begin with. You know, just
wanting to drive.
Yeah, wanting to drive. You know, I didn't have anything to do with race cars. I didn't start in a racing community. I didn't start in a racing family. I didn't start anywhere around racing. Just started at a young age liking cars, and it kind of blew up from there. I grew up with a father who was a contractor. When I got out of school, I was a contractor. But the whole time, cars were always an option. It was always something I loved, working on them, looking at them. My father would take me to car shows when I was a kid. And then one day I just woke up and I saw a commercial for NASCAR, and I decided I wanted to move south and figure out how to build a race car with the money I had from building houses and come back up to New Jersey and race. And once racing gets its teeth stuck in you, it doesn't let you out. So here I am 10 years later.
So your plan was to come down here, get the knowledge, and then head back and kick everybody's ass.
Yeah. I never intended on staying.
Wow.
I intended on coming down here, learning what I need to learn about cars, because I didn't have any knowledge on cars whatsoever. Learning what I need to learn, go back up there, make the money I was making in construction, and then as a hobby race on the side. Because whatever we did with cars up there, I didn't work on cars. I worked with wood in my hands on building houses. And whatever we did with cars was kind of back road, illegal stuff, you know. Mm-hmm. Here's my keys, drive my stuff, win, make some money, keep the car.
Wow.
And then, you know.
Fast and Furious stuff.
Yeah. And after people start asking you to do that, you learn that you could actually got some talent behind the wheel, and you decide you want to go a little bit farther. And you don't grow up in it. It's harder to know what goes on in racing. I didn't know anything about racing. I didn't know what goes on as far as how teams are structured, how cars are built, how much goes into it, and what it really takes, and all the involvement. I didn't know that. I just figured I'd come down here, learn what I need to learn, go home, make the money, build the cars, and go. And it doesn't work out like that after finding out after all these years.
What was your favorite car that really got your attention?
My favorite car in the world right now has always been a 69 or 70 Mach 1 Mustang. When I was a little kid, my goal was to buy one of them because my father had one when he was young. And I looked around when I was a little kid, you know, money saved up and everything, and I was going to buy one and restore one with my father, and that was where the kind of whole car thing started with me. Mm-hmm. And then after that, as far as racing goes, I had a good friend back home in New Jersey take me to a NASCAR race in Pocono back in 2001, the first race in June 2001. And I tell you, when people tell you they get tears of joy when you see something, I never experienced that in my life until Pocono in 2001. And I stood up for everybody usually stands up for the first 3 laps, 4 laps, and sits down. I probably stood up for the first 30 laps at Pocono. And that's a long time at Pocono.
Yeah.
And after you get that little itch right there, and the next race is Dover, and then the second Pocono, and you go to that all in 1 year, there's no turning back after that.
Who won that first race?
I don't even know. It was either Dale Jr. or Jimmy Johnson, maybe.
Yeah?
One or the other. It wasn't Dale Jr. I was a big Dale Jr. fan back then, so I would have remembered if he won. I can't remember exactly who won the race, to be honest with you.
Was 2001?
Yeah. I guess that's something I got to look back up. You think I'd remember? I just remember the feeling of being there. We did the whole pit road walk and everything, which is kind of, it's an option for all NASCAR fans, but it is a little bit more rare than just going in the stands and buying a ticket, you know? So for someone in New Jersey, for people in New Jersey to have tickets for the race and still have the pit pass, the hot pass, actually it was a cold pass for us, but just to walk around in the pits and see everything going, it was a big deal. It made its mark on me.
So then when you came down, were you going to go to NTI?
I came down, my way of making it down here and turning my back on the business, because, I mean, we had a successful business. I was making good money in my young 20s, and it's not something you just walk away from. So in order for me to come down, it's not like you could just say, all right, let me get away from this and go start over. You got to have a reason. So the school, an infomercial for NTI is the thing that got me, oh, you know what? There's a way I could learn about racing. There's a way I could learn about what I need to know to race cars, and then I could apply it back in New Jersey. And when you don't grow up around racing, you don't see how it's run and how it works and the whole format of it, you think that that's the way you could do it, you know? So that's what happened. I saw an infomercial one night laying in my bed. Next morning I woke up and I said, you know what? I want to go racing. And then, I don't know, maybe a month later, I came down to Mooresville, North Carolina. I looked around. I found a place to live. And then 2 months later, here I was.
So when I first met you, we were at Pitt. So did you go through the entire NTI, or did you?
Yeah,
what happened there?
Yeah. That was a long, grueling deal. There's a couple of stories built into that one. So I moved down here back in January of 2007, I believe it was. And I did the NTI thing. And that alone was its own chore because I didn't know anything about cars. So it wasn't so much for the NASCAR end of the school, because once you get into the racing aspect, you know that NASCAR end of the school really, it's more for commercial to get people to go to the school than it is for actual like learning and knowledge and actually applying it. Like you learn some stuff, but the actual technical end of the school for regular street cars and everything, that's all knowledge I did not have. I picked it all up going through that school, which is a great year and a half, I think it was about 18 months I was in there on and off just for breaks and everything. And I learned so much about cars. And then after that, while I was there, the whole time I was there, not only was I going to the school from 5 a.m. to 1 p.m., not only was I doing that, I was also tutoring after that and then volunteering every chance I could, going into the employment office and then volunteering for any type of racing car, dirt cars, road car, street, anything, asphalt, it doesn't matter. I would go into the office and volunteer for anything I could every single day of the week. I would go into the same woman and volunteer. And if she had something, I would do it. If she didn't, she didn't. And then after about pretty much my whole time at NTI, after doing that, I got pulled into another main office in the building, and they said, we got a job for you. And when they said that, they told me that right next door to the school was Petty. And when they told me that, they're like, we got a job for you. What we want you to do is go down the block to Petty and go meet with so-and-so and tell them that we sent you. And they'll interview you, and they'll go through the whole process. They'll show you around. So that's what I did. You know, couldn't be any happier than that. You spend how much time volunteering and sacrificing a lot of time and doing everything you could. Next thing you know, a team like Petty, biggest name in the world, you know, for someone that didn't grow up in racing, I still know how big that name is.
Yeah.
To hear that and go over there. I mean, I did everything I could. I went over there. I went and got a haircut. I put a suit on, dress shirt and everything. I went over there. I didn't know any better. I just job interview as far as I know. And I got over there and they met with me. They gave me an interview, showed me around the whole shop, introduced me to everybody. Engineers, crew chiefs, mechanics, showed me the whole shop, pretty much as hospitable as you could be. And you know, and I thought it went pretty well. So that was that. They told me they'd get back to me. And then the next day I went back to school and I met with the same man that sent me over there to begin with. And his first comment was, what the hell did you go to Petty for? I said, excuse me? What did I go to Petty for? You told me to go to Petty. No, I didn't. I told you to go to Pitt. Now, Pitt is the building between Petty and NASCAR Tech. Now, that's a whole different thing in itself. That's a pit stop training facility. It's the building right between NASCAR Technical Institute and Richard Petty Motorsports. Now, this man demands to me that he told me, I told you to go to Pitt. I said, no, you said Petty. No, I said Pitt. I'm like, no, you said Petty. Well, he actually admitted, he's like, you know what, I've been dealing with Petty all day, so there's a good chance I did say Petty. He's like, so I'm sorry for calling you in here and getting mad at you. He goes, but the job was actually for Pitt, so why don't you go next door to Pitt at the end of the day today and go talk to them over there. And that's what I did. So the next day, after getting a little deflated about the whole petty thing and miscommunication a little bit, I went over to the pit school and I did the interview there and I got the job there. And I wound up working there for a year. That's where we met. And that's pretty much where it all started. You know, working there for a year. I would still go to school. I would get out of school, then I would go straight over to work at pit. So I'd leave the house at 5 o'clock in the morning, work at pit till 9, 10 o'clock at night, get home around 10:30, and I did that for about a year.
So you never went through the actual pit program. You just always worked there.
Yeah, I just worked there. And as I was working there, I mean, as you're working there and you're doing the taking care of the cars or cleaning up the stuff, you know, you teach yourself as you go. You see how people are doing it, so you watch from afar as you're working. You see how the coaches are training everybody to do their pit stops and whatnot. And as you're watching and you get to service the cars, you get to practice on your own, and that's what I did. So I would school, work, practice, volunteer, tutor, everything I could do all day, every day. As much as I could for that first year and a half I was down here. And just it opened doors. I mean, anybody that wants to get into racing, if you want to know how, I mean, you could teach anybody how to work on a race car, and I'm proof of that because I didn't touch cars before this, and here I am today. But you can't teach everybody attitude. And if you got a good attitude and you know how to talk, and you just you enjoy people and people enjoy you, your attitude will get you a lot farther in this business than your skill will. And 9 times out of 10, it'll keep you in it too. So, you know, so you just network, get to know people. While I was working at pit, you know, everybody's starting their career there. And some people excel right out of the gate, and some people it takes a while. And those people that you communicate with, become friends with, you know, they got your name around too. And it turns out the job that I got at the pit school was because a current friend of mine actually left the pit school to go to a NASCAR Camping World Truck Series team. And when he left to go to that truck team, that's the job that I took over. Well, after I took over his job, he would still come back to the pit school and he would hang out and everything. And I got to know him. And it turns out after a while, he got me into the truck team that he was working on that he left for. He introduced me to people over there. So now, not only am I going to school and working at pit, but I would leave school an hour early and go to pit a half hour late. And in between the two, I would go over to that truck team that he worked on, and I would volunteer there for about an hour and a half, 2 hours, and then jet right back over by the school to go to the pit school to work for the next 6 hours, whatever it was. So now I'm packing the day as much as I can just to try to do everything I can to get where I need to be. And after a while, it worked out.
And when did it dawn on you that you weren't going to be going back home?
Last year, 9 years later. About 9. Well, this is my 10th year here. This is my 9th year in the sport. Next year will be my 10th year in the sport. And pretty much last year into this year is the first year that it dawned on me that I am not going back to New Jersey. I'm not going, obviously, the racing deal. I know now I know a lot more about racing to know that that's not how it goes. You don't just go learn how to build a race car and go race. It doesn't work that way.
No.
Now that I have that type of knowledge, I know that that's not an option because the money that I was making in construction is not there anymore now that I'm working on race cars. So it's a different animal now. And, you know, so I'm a racer now. I mean, I've done nothing but sacrifice my time and everything about me for something I love. And I'm still doing something I love 9 years later with not a regret in the world. So I'm not going back now. I mean, I'm here now. If I do go back into the previous life I had with construction, I believe I'm still here, but racing will still be a part of my life. There's no way I'll walk away from it.
Yeah, the weather here is a little bit nicer than Jersey, huh?
Yeah, I know. But when you're Jersey, you're Jersey. I mean, I love New Jersey. I'll miss it until the day I die if I don't go back.
Yeah.
But I mean, the weather's beautiful there too. So,
what got you into being an interior guy?
I guess it's just the way.
I mean, besides stature, a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, you got to be a certain size to get in and out of a race car. I mean, some people might be able to do it good, but they might not be able to get in and out of the car. It's a small window, but I think it's just process of elimination. Maybe everybody had their gig, and
so that was the place that was open.
I never really worked. I never had something I excelled at about a race car because it was my first gig in racing. So I went there and I volunteered for. When I got the option to volunteer for a Camping World Truck Series team, I did that for 3 months. I didn't just get hired. I did that, and I learned every single bit I could. I would ask questions. I would go to the crew chief, which He's a very standoffish man, by the way. It's a little bit hard to get in on him. Anybody that knows the man, it's a little bit hard. But you ask questions, you watch. They tell you to do something, and sometimes you get hard teachers that'll let you learn on your own, which is kind of where I got set off. A couple little instructions, learn on your own, and I got that. And I just kept asking questions, doing things, and then I think it just the way it worked out is that's the position that fit me best. Because when you start on a truck team, you don't do a single position. You work on everything.
Yeah.
I didn't just do interiors on the truck team, but that was the one thing that I did that nobody else did. So, I helped with the motors. I helped transmissions, gears, suspension. I helped on the setup plate. I helped on the pull down. After a while of asking as many questions as I could with the crew chief I was trying to get hired by and the team I wanted to be a part of and the sport I wanted to be a part of. After doing all that, he took me in. He was a good guy to start with because he took me in and he let me be his right-hand man, take down all the notes, just help him out with setting up the cars and measuring everything. So I learned a real lot real fast, going from knowing nothing about race cars to being taught how to put a hub together my first day to a couple months later knowing how to set up a car. And it's you learn a lot real quick if you want to, if you got the drive to do it. And before you know it, after a couple months of volunteering, I got hired at the racetrack, which was kind of cool. So it took a while to get to where I got to get a job. It took a lot of hours of sacrifice. And that's what it takes in this sport. Like I said, it's attitude over ability sometimes. So
yeah, I think it's the road to get into NASCAR, which I went down the same road. Like, we didn't know anybody. This is a tight-knit community.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a lot of who you know. But when you're trying to get in from the outside, you have to bust your ass. You have to put in the hours. You have to try everything that you can because what you're up against.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And you're up against more than just people, a tight-knit family and community. You're up against more than that. Outsiders are outsiders when you got a tight family like that, and and when you're not a person that's got the word y'all in your vocabulary, it makes a little bit of a difference too. It makes it a little bit harder, sometimes you gotta, even though you're not trying to win someone over because you're still trying to be yourself, you still have to win people over, whether you like it or not. So you got to stay true to your roots and true to yourself. But at the same time, you got to let these people know that the surface is not what you're not going surface to surface here. You got to get to know this person and really, it's a different world. It's a big step going from New Jersey to North Carolina and getting to racing from being a Jersey boy, but it's a big step for Southerners to let someone from New Jersey in too.
Yeah.
It works both ways. So there's a lot of work involved with this.
Yeah. I remember the first race team that I worked for, they called me a Yankee. And I'm from the middle of nowhere in Indiana. I'm like, Yankee. I guess technically, but I'm not. Like, I would call someone else Yankee.
You're above a certain line. They're not.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, okay, this little imaginary line. Okay, yes, but I'm not. I don't fit your typical Yankee. But so you kept pushing your way through, going up, bigger team, and then the whole petty deal ends up becoming a full circle.
Yeah. That's the first amazing part about it all is after volunteering for that truck team for a good 3 months and getting hired at the racetrack on the spot. That was a big deal. That was a race that started where I got flown out there, volunteered to fly out there and be a tire changer, which I taught myself how to do pretty much at the pit school while I was working there. I got flown out there to be a tire changer, and when I got there, the tire changer was there. So they're like, all right, you're carrying tires. So I carried rear tires instead of changing front tires, and we didn't even make it halfway before we rained out. And then when we rained out and rescheduled for another day, a couple of days later, the front changer had to leave. And the next thing you know, I'm changing fronts on the same race on the same truck. So I went from being a rear carrier to a front changer.
Where was this at?
And this is in Kansas. That's why it's where we just came from. That's why it's one of my favorite tracks. Because after that race, I did both. I did rear carrier and front changer in the same race. And then after that, our driver got his first top 10. And right after the race, on the spot, they hired me. So that's where the career started. That's when I got my first job in racing. And that team and the people that were on that team treated me great. And I learned a lot of stuff. To the point where the next year I was the engineer of the race, doing the fuel mileage and everything on top of the pit box. doing pit stops and fuel mileage, and then just fuel mileage and everything. And just getting to that level that fast, I didn't realize it. To me, it was just doing what I was told. But down the road, making it higher up the ranks, realizing certain people actually dedicated to that part of the sport and doing that, it's a big deal. But from the truck team that I worked on for 4 years, and it was a great place to work with good friends and good times and good people. And it was a fun time and a lot of hours and a lot of work. From there, I got the opportunity where someone that worked with me on that truck team moved up to Richard Petty Motorsports. And when he moved up, it turns out they needed an interior guy for the 43 Cup car. And he threw in my name. And next thing I know, I got a call. And that pretty much spoke for itself. I mean, if you're going to go from not working on a race car to all of a sudden 4 years later, busting your butt to get where you're at, and you get the call from the king, I'm not a lifer NASCAR fan. I started in 2001 when I went to that first race in Pocono. And 2001, I was also 20 years old. So 20 years old, I finally got into NASCAR. The first race I watched was actually the Daytona 500 that year, and I was hooked after that because it was the saddest thing I've seen.
Oh yeah.
And that's pretty much where
that was the first race that you watched.
That's the first race I watched. I was delivering pizzas, and every time I would come into the shop, I would watch the TV. I was doing 2 jobs at that time, and I would watch the TV, and then I would watch the TV, and I would watch it, and then I saw that, and that most devastating point, just about the most devastating spot in this sport's history was my first race ever watching. And then that year I went to my first race. And even though I was 20 years old and that's the first time I'm really watching NASCAR and know anything about it, I still know who the number 43 is. I still know who the number 3 is and who drives them. And for me to make it to the point in a couple of years from doing nothing in racing to getting to work for the king on the 43 car with Eric Almirola was a big deal. I mean, that's going from nothing to the top. And I'm not saying the top of results. I'm not saying to the top of old 7-time, I'm not talking about, I'm saying it's the number 1 name in NASCAR.
Yeah.
You get to work under his name. And that was a big deal. That was just, I mean, it's hard not to smile ear to ear every day when you're at work, working your butt off, driving yourself into the ground, 4 days on the road, 3 days at home. And you can still smile about it. You got something good going.
And he's a pretty hands-on guy. Like, you see him walking through the shop a lot. He's always there. You know, he's always at the racetrack.
Yeah.
So
it's at the very least, man, if you ever get the point to be able to hear Richard Petty, the king, tell a story, you won. It's not a meet and greet fan thing. It's not something he has to do for, or somebody would have to do for just pretty much meet and greet or just do the sponsor end of the things or just talk to people or just present, just everything. You just, you're in his environment and you're there and he's telling you a story about his career. That's not something you could see on the TV. It's not something you could read out of a book. It's something straight out of his mind right to your ears. It's amazing to be able to hear that man tell you a story.
So you went over the wall a lot.
Yes. I've gone over the wall for, like I said, I got hired on that truck team as a changer, but I also carried apparently because I did it my first race. And I did a couple pit stops before that level. I pretty much jumped right into the truck series. I think I did 1 Hooters Cup race before that or 1.5 Hooters Cup races because the other one we didn't do any stops. And I pretty much jumped right into the truck series as far as pit stops go. And I was a changer, changed for half that season. And then after that, the next season I was a carrier. And I carried rears on that truck for a year. And then I was a front carrier on that truck for a year. And then when I went over to Petty, obviously they got all their wheels in motion. I mean, they got all their pit stop guys where they need to be. But when I first started there, they obviously, we all know how it is when it comes to marketing people for a position. And if you look at defensive ends on football, now they're built pretty stout, 6'5", 260, run a 4.4, but you're not going to put a guy in there that's probably about 6'1" or 5'11",
Yeah.
It kind of works that way in NASCAR. I'm not going to count anybody out because I've seen, you never count in any sport. You never count size out. But as far as marketability goes, these teams are pulling guys out of college football. I mean, they'll pull anybody they can as long as they could throw a house across the street.
Yeah.
I know a guy that jacks cars. It's pretty stout. That it's all about the gains. And but you know how it is when it comes to that stuff. So when I got up to that level, I wasn't really Would I love to do pit stops? Yeah. I'm the type of guy, I played football for 11 years. I want to be in the game. I'm that guy. You want to give me the ball in the last play of the game, fourth and goal from the 1 second left to win the championship. I want the ball. Like I want to be in as far as pit stops go, but it just sometimes it's not in the cards. Luckily enough, when I started at Petty, not so much for him, but for me, the front carrier on the 43 car, he's coming off a shoulder surgery in the off season. So luckily enough, while he had his, for me, not for him, when he had his surgery and he was recovering, I told him that I knew how to carry tires. So like, all right, well, you know what? We'll give this little kid a try, like, well, we'll see what he could do. I mean, obviously back then Petty and Rouse shared pit crews, so they had their backups in place. They didn't have to bring me in, but they let me do it just off my word, I guess, So I went out there and I practiced for him for a good week and a half, and no faults. Went just as smooth as it would if he was there. So they were pretty pleased with that, They expect, they knew that they could count on me if they ever had to, type of deal. But as far as pit stops go on the cup level, I mean, it wasn't in the cards because the people were in position, but they knew that I was there if need be. And then that's where it went from there. Pit stops on the side, like off weekends or companion weekends where our garage is closed. I would do pit stops wherever I can because I want to do it and I want to compete. But otherwise, the number one priority is the car you work on. You don't want a chance getting hurt. You don't want to, out of all my years of racing, this is my first year I haven't done pit stops. This is year 9. And it's the first year I haven't done pit stops. And I'll be honest with you, I've never worried about getting hit by a car or getting hurt. I don't know if I worried about it or just didn't care. Like you're conscious of it. You look down pit road, you make sure nothing's coming. You make sure you could save your changer if you can, which I don't know if other carriers do that, but I do. You make sure you could save a guy that's not looking. You make sure you could see if something's coming, but you don't fear it. I mean, it's just part of the job.
Yeah.
You expect the professionals to do their job and you don't have to worry about it. So, I mean, as far as that goes, I mean, you don't worry about that, but when you work on a car and you're not there to pit, you don't chance getting hurt because you don't want to lose your job that you work so hard and struggled so hard to get. So you want to pit, but you don't, you don't want to have that bad thing happen where you lose what you actually worked for because of something you're doing on the side. So that's kind of how pit stops have gone for me. Do whatever you can while you can, but keep the job at hand that you've really been working for. And would I love to do pit stops full time? Absolutely. Absolutely. Number 1 for the competition. And then a close number 1 second for the money, because obviously the pit crew makes more than the mechanics do. And we don't have to get too deep into that. But I mean, money always talks, but when you love what you do, it really doesn't matter as much.
What's your favorite position? Carrying or being a tire changer?
Carrying, definitely. Definitely carrying. I love carrying tires. I mean, changing's rough on these guys, man. They don't tell you this in the when you're watching the races. These guys get picked apart for what they do or what they don't do, or they get praised for what they can do. I mean, these guys, every time they hit one of those lug nuts with the gun, it is just impact, steel on steel to your knuckles. Every time they run around the car and drop down, you got knee pads on, but it's just thin knee pads. They drop to their knees. They're jumping down to their knees. They're slamming down. Then they're getting up and turning and doing it again, and they're just slamming themselves and slamming themselves and slamming themselves. And you don't get that feel. You don't get that feel. It's like you could hear a football hit. You could hear the crunch when you're watching the game, but you can't hear it when these guys hit the ground or when these guys hit the lug nuts because there's so much sound around it. It's rough on these guys, man. It's hard.
Yeah.
So, I mean, as far as carrying goes, I love carrying tires just because I just thought it was more fun, but at the same time, I feel like it's less taxing on the body to carry a 60, 70-pound tire than it is to get up, get down, jump, get up, get down, hit your hands against the tires, pull them and the heat and everything. I mean, I'm not saying it's impossible to do, but it's very taxing on these guys. These guys don't get credit for how much they beat themselves up to do what they do. You got guys that are in their 30s beating up on their bodies and then getting up towards 40, beating up on their bodies, and they just get up and do it every time. And it's carrying, I feel like, is easier on the body. To me, it's more fun, but I also feel like it's easier on the body. I'm built for a changer at my size, and I probably could have went that way, but I think getting in the sport at my age at 26, 27 years old, compared to these guys coming in at 17, 18 years old, getting trained till they're 19, 20 and beating up their body like that's one thing. But getting in when you're getting close to 30 and then trying to jump up and down and getting into that motion, it's a whole different animal.
Yeah, you start to heal a little bit slower and a little bit more aches and pains in the morning. But on the driver's side, whenever I've seen you get in a go-kart or really anything you've ever driven for fun, you've always been really good. So you've got it somewhere in you. But I mean, to have no racing background whatsoever, and for you to get in a go-kart and run with some of the top guys in the series, I mean,
man, life is a fun game of what ifs, isn't it? I mean, what are you going to do? I mean, some people get that golden opportunity, like let's say the William Byrons of the world. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty sure, I don't know if my facts are 100% correct, but I'm pretty sure the man started on a computer.
Yeah, I think so.
I'm pretty sure the man's driving for Hendrick next year.
Yeah.
And one of the top dog numbers in the sport.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's talent out there.
Top 5 Mount
There's
Rushmore
talent out
numbers.
there. There's talent out there that will make the best of the best of the best look like they don't know what they're doing, and we will never see that talent till the day we die. And I'm a true believer about that. There are some people that are put on this earth for something, and they have it better than others, and I guarantee there's a bunch of them out there that might be able to be better at what we're doing than some of these guys out here, and it blows my mind. And that's the whole reason I wanted to get into this. I'm not saying I'm one of those guys, but for some reason driving clicks with me. I don't know what it is. That was my interest for some reason. When it comes to handling a car and feeling the movement of a car, for some reason I never had to be taught. I never had to learn something. Where if I ever did see something on paper or hear something or see even playing video games where it teaches you what an apex is, I didn't know what an apex is, but it's just something I already knew without knowing it. Like, this is the way you want to attack a corner, which I didn't know that that's just the way my body and my brain tells me to do something. But on paper, I didn't know that there was actual names and strategy behind it, you know? So some people see them things, some people don't, you know? Some running backs see the hole, some running backs don't, you know? It's just, you see those things, you feel them, your body can feel them, your brain can feel them. I feel like I have that type of feel, and that's what made me want to drive to begin with, because any time I've ever tried to get in something and go faster than somebody else, just about every time I have. Mm-hmm. Until I got down here and started racing these rental go-karts with these guys that are actual race car drivers. But you know what I mean? I mean, some people have talents they don't know about, and they just weren't born into it to really find out about it, you know?
What's ever stopped you from racing something on even like a slight competitive level? I mean, a go-kart, a legend car, a late model, anything.
Finances.
Same
thing stops every race car driver from racing something.
Yeah.
I mean, number one, I mean, I've sacrificed my entire life to get where I'm at right now. I sacrificed a very successful business in New Jersey. I sacrificed my family. I sacrificed my friends. I moved to North Carolina by myself at 26 years old and left everything I knew and started all over by myself. And I've sacrificed every single day since to get where I'm at today. I mean, hours beyond hours. And even when you're not working, you're thinking about working, or you're stressing about working, or you want to do more about it. It consumes you. It's a virus, you know, like
it's not a job. It's a lifestyle.
Yeah, it is. It's a lifestyle. It's a career. It's just, my career has not given me the opportunity to have the time to race something, nor the finances to do so. So, I mean, some people grow up with money to get into racing and be able to buy a race car and build a race car. Some people don't, but get the opportunity to use someone else's money to do it. I'm not in that position, nor do I have the time to really step away from my job to do it.
Yeah.
So it wasn't really an option. I found that out after my first 2 years in the business, because I learned how racing actually works with sponsors and equipment and how much it costs and everything. Once you learn all that, you know that you're going to be building race cars and not driving race cars. And that's pretty much where it's gone since then. So I've just tried to better my career and what I do and the job at hand, and learn more about race cars and more ways to do things than I already know. Like 9 years later, I've been doing the same specific job for the past probably 5 years of my career now. And even though I still do the same job and I've been doing it and I've been honing my own skills, I still look at other people and how they do it, so I can still learn from a different perspective and angle. You never know everything. The second you think you know everything, you might as well go back home, you know? So
kind of go into what it's like to be an interior guy.
It all depends on what team you're on and the task at hand. I mean, some teams will have their interior guys. Like I said, on a truck series level, everybody does everything. When you get up to a higher level or a bigger name team, you have job specific people. certain area specific people. That way they could concentrate on their deal. Everybody does their thing and it all comes together. Now on a level like I'm on right now, on a bigger level team in the Xfinity series, my job is on the interior is just make sure all the parts are in there. Driver specific, driver comfort, driver safety. I mean, you're making sure everything that's in there is right to his comfort level, because he's going to sit in a heat box for 2-3 hours, and you want to be comfortable. You want to be able to concentrate on the handling of the car and not how he feels in it. Plus, you got to make sure that anybody listening to this wants to get into racing, if they ever want to work on the interior of a race car, if you don't understand the fact that you are the driver's last line of defense, you need to stay home. That is the biggest, most important part of what I do and being an interior guy on a race team. If you're going to do the inside of the car and you're going to put a seat in the car, if you're going to put bolts in a seat, if you're going to tighten stuff down, if you're going to put belts on something that holds a man's life together, you better breathe, eat, sleep, crap, everything that. Because if you take a second off from that, you're putting someone else's life at risk. So that's the number one part of being an interior guy in a race car.
Safety.
Is someone else's life is in your hands. No matter which way you look at it, you're not feeling good today. You're not thinking right today. Something's off. If you got someone else's life in your hands, get over it. Get over it. So that's the number one thing as far as being a NASCAR interior guy is it's about keeping someone safe while they're doing something that's not safe. Mm-hmm. And it's your job to do it. I mean, there's other implements on the car that keep the car safe to dissipate energy and make sure NASCAR's done a fantastic job keeping these drivers safe.
Yeah.
The injury level has gone down so much because of all these adjustments they made. And no matter how much the cars have changed and people don't like them and they're not the same as they used to be as far as being able to manipulate cars, everything they've done, a lot of it has been for safety, and these drivers are safer and safer.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
it's fantastic. So as far as an interior guy goes, that's number one is their safety. There's nothing more important than that. As far as anything else that's involved, I mean, on the level team I'm on, I mean, I handle other stuff, make sure the driver's equipment's still there, make sure, you got to handle helmets, and certain teams have different sponsors every week, different helmets, different fire suits, different gloves, safety equipment, all that stuff, shoes. You got some teams take care of that. They have people that take care of that only that work in offices. Some people, the actual mechanics, take care of it. So, I'm on one of those teams where I try to take care as much as I can for the guy that I'm taking care of inside the car and make sure he's safe and healthy. He's going to do his work on his own to make sure his body's healthy, and I'm going to do my work on my own, make sure I help keep him healthy. Mm-hmm. So whether they like to hear it or not, you still got to try to poke at people sometimes. Yeah, drink some water, light yourself up, make sure you got this going good, But yeah, that's the most important part about being an interior guy. As far as making sure like all the parts are in there, dash, steering column, shifter, safety, fire, all that stuff, that's you get into a rhythm. After a while, you just build the inside of the car, but the most important thing is their safety. Can't stress it enough.
So basically, like the comfort thing, like it can vary widely from driver to driver, right?
Absolutely. I got the team I work on. It's got two brothers, and one's 3 inches taller than the other, 4 inches taller than the other. I don't know what the exact number is, but as far as that goes, the pedals and everything, it's steering column, belts, everything, the seat, every seat just about has an insert poured where the driver will sit in the seat, and they'll use expandable foam while the driver's in the seat, and it'll suck to their body and contour their body. And then they'll take it out and they'll shave it down and make it nice and smooth, and then wrap it in a cloth, a fire retardant cloth, and they'll make every seat specific for a driver's body to the point where even if a driver gains or loses 20 pounds, they're going to have to do it all over again just so they're safe again, and it conforms to their body. So as these guys get fit, or as the season goes on and they lose their weight from running 130 degrees for 3 hours and losing 10, 15, 20 pounds of water weight and everything, as the season goes on, they'll lose weight. Some of the guys stay a little heavy, but you know what I mean? Like you got to constantly stay on top of that stuff and make sure that they're comfortable. We've come a long way since those stories that I was talking about, the King telling me his stories before. Mm-hmm. He was telling me how he had a plaster seat poured for him, and he just sat on plaster. He just put a bucket in there. They poured plaster around it, put him in a plastic suit, like a garbage bag, and they poured plaster around him. And that was his seat. No padding, no nothing. That was his seat, just plaster. Just sitting on plaster in a car, driving around a track at how many miles per hour. And we've come a long way from that, because now it's all safety foam. It all dissipates energy. The cars have gotten so safe. It's unbelievable. These guys hit hard. some scary stuff.
So those seats, if anyone's ever seen a racing seat outside a race car, like if you set a racing seat right next to a race car, you would look at it and say, there's no way in hell that is going in that.
In the window?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a process to get a seat inside of a car. There's all different types of seats too. You have carbon fiber seats where it's like it's just a carbon fiber. We call it a bucket, but it's shaped, I don't even know. It's like maybe like a crescent moon, but it's just wide. It's probably just about 2 feet, a little bit more than 2 feet wide, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know the dimensions. But there's all different types of carbon buckets. Like, I don't know the exact dimensions, but there's different types of carbon buckets, and they're all got their own shape. But getting them in a window is unbelievable. And then you got aluminum seats, which are a little bit easier to get in the windows, but you still there's an actual process to getting a race seat in a window. You can only do it a certain way to where it'll actually go in there. You got to lift it, tilt it, turn it, spin it. Mm-hmm. And you got to do all this and make sure you don't scratch up the inside of the car.
Yeah, there's that.
you gotta, it takes more care than just, like you look at a race car, you see a seat set in it. It took a little bit to get it in there.
Yeah. So is there anything, I mean, you don't have to call them out, but is there any like weird or specific driver comfort things that like a driver likes specifically? Like, I want this here, or I want that there, or make sure that you put this in there.
Well, I mean, drivers got their own things, some drivers, it's just mainly some drivers will get in and go. I've had drivers that just get in and go. I've had a driver where every time he did a lap on the track, he had to adjust the steering wheel 1/8 of an inch up, or 1/8 of an inch left or right, or 1/8 of an inch in, or 1/8 of an inch out. Every time I have drivers that would adjust the seatbelts 1/8 of an inch every time. I mean, 1/8 of an inch we're talking about. 1/8 of an inch. It's not comfortable, And I have drivers that get in the car and go. I mean, some guys just get in the car and go and just go fast, and some guys are very, very, very detailed on how they want it. And there's no right or wrong way either. I mean, it's just their personal preference. I mean, the more you can make them not think about how they feel inside the car, the more they could concentrate on how the car feels on the track. Mm-hmm. And that's the biggest thing. But you got guys that want certain food during a cup race because cup races are long, so you put gummies in their door padding, or you
gummies. Wouldn't that melt?
No, they don't. Or you put some food in there. Some guys will have you hand a sandwich in there if it's a longer race. It's all preference. Some guys, they'll have drinks. Some guys will have different types of drinks with electrolytes or just water. Some guys will have automatic pumps that go into their helmet where they just hit a button and it pumps the water for them instead of grabbing a water bottle. Some guys are picky about certain things on how certain things look inside the car.
Like
I've had a driver that if there's a little string hanging from a window net or a piece of tape, how it like frays off, or it's over. It's game over. It drives them nuts.
OCD
drives them nuts. Yeah. Which I can appreciate that because I'm that type of OCD. I would rather have everything right like that myself. So they're all personal preference, and you know what? It changes from day to day. I mean, you can't tell me that sometimes you don't get in your street car and feel like your seat's different.
Yeah.
So it changes, like it's sometimes things just don't feel the same, and it happens. And then you have drivers that run both series where they go from a Cup car to an Xfinity car, and it's a completely different feel. I mean, from the car suspension to the car's interior to the way they sit in it to how it rides, it's a completely different feel. So it may not feel the same, even though the numbers may all be the same as far as measurements for pedals, steering column, all that stuff. So you just got to take it with a grain of salt, man, because sometimes sometimes people are in bad moods, so you got to deal with it,
So when do you get your baseline? Is that at the beginning of the year, or is there there's a time where the driver gets in and kind of says, okay, so say that you were going to start with a new driver and he was going to get in the car. Does he just basically sit in it and say, okay, I want this moved back, I want this moved here, and then you're writing this all down, so as you build cars throughout the year, you have it close, right?
Yeah. I mean, when you get a new driver, I mean, it doesn't even have to be at the beginning of the year. Sometimes it's not in the off season. Sometimes you got 2 days to make this happen before you got to load it and go to the racetrack.
True.
So, because sometimes races aren't always signed for the full year. So you might have open slots for open races where you don't have a driver yet. So you might have to pull a driver in and fill that spot, or a driver might want to come drive for you and is waiting for that spot to open. So it might be last minute deals. So you'll take whatever seat they want to use, whether it's their seat, whether it's a carbon seat, which carbon seats are usually, there's a couple different styles of carbon seat, but they're all pretty much generic, where your insert is what the padded insert that they pour is what sets it apart from driver to driver. So the buckets are all the same.
All the same
for the most part. There's a couple different buckets, but for the most part, they're all the same. So you get the baseline of what they want to run, and you put it in there, and you get it close. You get them propped up in it, and you tack everything together. And after you do that, you pour it, and then you get them to feel comfortable there in the shop. And this is sitting on jack stands in a race shop. This isn't on a track traveling at 180, 190 miles per hour. So they get comfortable there in the shop, and sometimes that doesn't always work out. It's not where they want it to be, and they find out after they get to the track and run it.
And
so
you adjust, bouncing down the backstretch in Michigan.
You adjust from there. They're not going to know until they run 2-3 hours in a car that they're not comfortable. I mean, I've driven plenty of trips from here to New Jersey back home, and you get uncomfortable after a while.
Yeah, I've seen drivers get blisters on their forearms from being up on the wheel so hard, and just that wrong angle that it was at for the race, it just kept hitting him there, and it rubs a blister on there.
I mean, everything from you don't know after a while, like if they don't have their fire suit on when they sit in the seat at the shop where you put your steering column, if they buckle their seatbelts on with the fire suit, it might hold the center cam lock buckle of their seatbelts. It might hold it, the fire suit might hold it up off of them just enough to slide on the steering wheel. You don't know if that's going to happen. And if that happens, it could unbuckle their seatbelt. So you don't know and stuff like, and that's, not every driver is that close to the steering wheel. These are bigger men I'm talking about. So not everybody's got that gut that hangs over the steering wheel, but it can happen, like you got to think about these things. Some things you don't know as a static test in the shop. Sometimes you have to have that dynamic test on the track. And after you get to there, then you actually you fine tune it. It's kind of like a race team working together where a bunch of new guys get thrown together on a race team and they don't know each other yet. And then all of a sudden, as they start working together, they start coming into a rhythm, and then you're just a well-oiled machine. Well, it's the same thing inside the car for a driver. You get them close, and then if it's not dead on from the beginning, you do whatever you can to get them where they need to be. So get in the car and go.
Yeah. I remember you telling me the story about how you put the brake temp sensors, those little strips, you would put those on the floorboard, like down by their feet, to make sure that their feet aren't getting too hot. And that's just for you. So like you would see it and they might not even mention anything to you. Be like, hey man, it's getting hot down here. Yeah. Because in practice, it's a lot shorter. So you're not running the full 2, 3, 4, 5 hours sometimes in that race car for the hour practice. If you see that, hey, those feet panels are getting kind of hot, it might not affect him now because he's only in there for an hour. But once you get going, it could really affect him later. So
yeah, some things you got to try to think ahead if it's a situation that you think might go uncomfortable for the driver, which I'll be honest, man. Everybody says if you pay me the type of money a driver gets, I'll get in that car and go. It's hot in a race car, man. It's hot. It's hot working outside the race car at the racetrack. I mean, it is hot. 115 degree heat index, wearing pants and long sleeves and working on a car that's 200 something degrees. It's hot for us outside the car. You can only imagine how hot it is inside the car, with the heat. These cars don't have insulation. They don't have the carpet, the foam, or the fire, like the insulation that you would have from a regular street car, from the motor to the inside of the car. All that heat in the car being sucked to the ground, it's all inside the car for these drivers. So, I mean, it's a heat box. I mean, these guys tough it out. And you gain that type of respect for them where it's like, suck it up and do it. But at the same time, it takes a lot to sit in a heat box that long. It's like you wouldn't sit in a sauna for 3 hours, No. So like when you can predict or you think something's going to get hot, when you're going to a race like your dreaded state of Indy, that track right there is just about like standing on the sun for everybody. Yeah. Probably race fans included because there's no air circulation.
Not no more though. No, they moved it.
Thank you for moving that race. But that's a perfect example. I mean, that track is almost like a speedway. Drivers have their gas pedal all the way to the firewall just about the whole race, so they're just sitting there with their foot right up against the thin piece of metal, just on the gas pedal that's right up against the thin piece of metal almost that separates them from the motor. So that heat transfer stays on their foot. And they wear booties, insulated booties on their heels, but their toes get hot too. So at a speedway, when they're sitting there and their foot's constantly closer to the motor, that heat, and you're sealed up and all that heat just transfers to their foot. I mean, it gets hot. So you try to think ahead and think whatever you could do. Everything from even making a wooden gas pedal, which I've done before, just to try to help transfer the heat and dissipate it a little bit. So make it a little bit better. Just padding from the actual pedal, from the metal pedal to their actual foot, just to transfer a little bit of heat. Yeah, just to help them out to transfer that heat. So if you could put temp strips inside the car to try to find out where it's getting the hottest and see how you could redirect or just dissipate that heat a little bit, you do it, you know? So that's pretty much what the temp strips are for, to just try to stay ahead of the curve and try to predict what might happen so your driver doesn't experience the type of discomfort that'll slow the car down. Mm-hmm. So the last thing you want is something like that to ruin your chances of winning a race, because we're all out there to win a race. Mm-hmm. So you don't want something that could have been prevented hurting your chances of doing better.
Since you brought that up, will the setups from race to race change? So like if you know that you're going to go to Talladega and he's going to have his foot wide open, that's going to be where you're going to make him the most comfortable, right? Or say if you go to a road course and you know that he's going to be moving around grabbing gears and stuff, is it going to change from track to track?
Certain things do, certain things don't. I mean, as far as the pedal goes, they have their own comfort zone where their heel's going to be in relation to their knee and their seat and all that, mm-hmm. and where their toe wants to be from their heel. I mean, the numbers are pretty close to the same. You might have a little bit of variation. I mean, certain things are going to change based on location of certain parts of the car, you know. Certain cars are shaped a little bit different than others, so certain pieces are going to be a little bit different size. But all in all, the measurements from the driver to the actual pedals and the steering column are usually right around the same for most of it. As far as a road course goes, compared to ovals or bank tracks or speedway tracks, road courses are a little bit different animal. Now, when they're doing ovals and they're just turning left, that's one thing. And they're on the banking, that's one thing. So the right side of their head, they really can't turn their head right. They're restricted with their safety equipment. They're restricted with their seat. So they could just look up at their mirror, but they can't really turn their head right and look out the window. And they're leaning left in their seat inside the car because of the banking and everything. You know, you got lean to it, you know, so they can feel the car. Now, when you go to a road course, you kind of flatten the seat out, make it a little bit more parallel to the ground, you know, parallel to the car. So, because they got to shift a lot, you know, they got to use the shifter. They're not just leaning left, getting up to gear and going. They got a lot more right turn stuff going on. So you change the angle of the seat a little bit, and you make them a little bit more comfortable for road course because they got to make right turns also, you know. Like most of the stuff on ovals is just about the same. Not too much variation there. I mean, there will be certain different comfort levels as far as insulation and stuff like that based on speedway, short track, or intermediate races. But road courses are a whole different animal because there's actual right turns involved. So you don't want a driver leaning left, you know, preparing for just banked left turns and then having to turn right against pretty much all their inertia and their weight. Mm-hmm. You know, like that would be my best explanation on how to explain on the feel of it. But you want them to be a little bit more level so they could go left and right, shift comfortably, and do all that stuff. Seats are shaped a little bit different, where the rib protectors might be a little bit less on the right or the left, just a little bit more parallel mm-hmm. and symmetrical than they would be on something you just turn left. Mm-hmm. So there is variation as far as road courses go, but as ovals, they're pretty much close to it. At least with the people I've worked with, they're all pretty similar.
Now, just like everything else in racing, everything is so regulated by the rule book. How tight of a window is inside of the race car compared to outside the race car? Or is it really regulated on seat placement and all that stuff?
Yeah. I mean,
because obviously like moving it more to the left would be better.
Yeah, there's rules in place. I mean, you got your rules like, I mean, the driver's head and headrest can't be touching the window net. You know, because if something like that happens, the car rolls up on its left side, you know that the driver's head support's going to be hitting.
Yeah.
You know, so you can't have that. There's rolls from the bar behind the seat that the seat's attached to. The seat can only be so far forward with the poured insert. It can only be so far forward from that bar. So there's not as much stress there, so it's still all together. I mean, NASCAR's made the seat mounting points. They've made them much stronger than when I first started. I mean, these things, well, you would have a single tab mount or something like that, just 3/16 steel or something before, to now where it's a double shear, double tab, 1/4 inch steel mm-hmm. brackets that hold these rails in, that hold the seat. The actual rails that hold the seat in are thicker now. So everything has gotten stronger for these drivers, and it's helped. I mean, the injuries that we used to see, even when I first started 9 years ago, there was injuries then that you're not quite seeing as much now.
Yeah.
I mean, you'll see the accidents like Kyle Busch hitting the wall and breaking his legs. But I mean, between the safer barrier and not having a safer barrier, that's your number one thing.
Yeah.
That's the greatest thing I could imagine. That and the Hans are two of the best things that NASCAR's ever done. You know?
Yeah, I mean, you're having crashes and wrecks now where the driver gets out and stomps off in anger when before they were getting on a stretcher and they were getting helped. You know, they were getting placed on the stretcher, and now you see them just stomp it off in anger, you know, flipping off the driver or whatever.
Yeah.
And even like you said, 10 years ago, that wasn't a thing.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen some horrific wrecks over the past couple of years. I mean, Daytona last year wasn't it wasn't pretty, you know, and drivers to walk away and be able to salute their fans from stuff like that, no matter how much people could get upset about the cars looking different or being different, whether it's fans or employees. NASCAR has taken steps in the right direction to protect these guys from doing a job that is not safe. They're going out there and laying their life on the line. I mean, the whole point is to go as fast as you can without crashing the car. So the whole goal is to get the car on that edge. Mm-hmm. So any lap they could crash the car, and they've done everything they could to make these guys safe. As far as those rules go inside the car, I mean, your belts have to be within inspection of 2 years. You can't have a belt that's over 2 years. Your seats have to be inspected. They're certified every couple of years. I mean, everything's got to be checked and maintained, and it's got to be gone over. I mean, if it's not, they don't need to be getting in the car if it's not safe.
So most of your regulations are more about safety.
Yeah.
Safety.
Yeah. Well, based. I mean, there's location on the seat, like I said earlier, as far as how far forward. I mean, everything's in relation to each other as far as belts, belt location. All the seats have integrated belts now, which is a new thing over the past couple of years, where they used to bolt outside to the seat mounting points, and now they're actually bolted to the seat itself on the aluminum seats. The carbon seats have had that. So it's everything they've done is stepped in the right direction to make things a little bit more and more safe. And the best part is they never accept that what they have is as safe as it could be. It's not like they stopped testing stuff to make it safer. Mm-hmm. You know, the R&D and everybody that works on the safety end of these things, they constantly check more and more stuff to make sure more and more bad stuff doesn't happen. And they're always implementing more rules. We don't stay with the same rules for 10 years at a time. We get new safety requirements almost like yearly, and even during the year we'll get more just based on accidents that happen that year. You might have an accident that happens in March where it's a pretty bad accident, and how can we make this better? And then before the season's over, you'll have that rule implemented already just to make it safer because X happened earlier in the year. So it's great how they do it, you know, and as things are constantly changing, it makes it a little bit more workload for everybody, but at the same time it's for the better cause. You know, I mean, you're keeping these guys safe.
Yeah, I've noticed that a lot of the bars inside the race car, they all have a nickname, and it was like, this is the Bodine bar, or this is the whatever bar, based on a crash that happened, and then because of that crash, they now put that bar there, or they now put this plate there, or you know.
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much these cars get better and better at someone else's misfortune almost, you know? Like every time something really bad happens, and sometimes it's a close call, sometimes it's a bad call, but every time it happens, it implements something to make it not happen again. And the more you keep doing that, the more bad things won't happen, and I think that's great.
Have you seen a place where they can change something? Do you have any ideas yourself? Because I mean, you got your hands on this stuff all the time. Do you see where they can put any improvements or change anything?
Yeah, I've discussed stuff with the NASCAR officials. I try to stay pretty close to the NASCAR officials. We have the same couple of officials that do interiors and concentrate on it. One of them I stay up with, and me and him bounce ideas off each other as much as we can, just to see if we can make something a little bit better. Hey, this looks like it might happen, or hey, I saw this happen. Not to get into any details, but we'll go back and forth across things where let's say my car is 100% within the rules, but he'll say something to me like, oh, what if we did it this way? You think it would be better or worse, you know? Or if I saw something that could have gone wrong but didn't, on not even like a car I work on another one. Because I will go and check other cars out, interiors, even though, I mean, you're really not supposed to look at other people's, I mean,
it's there.
It's common courtesy. You don't just go around looking at other people's cars, you know. I'm not trying to see anything bad. I'm just trying to see what could have went wrong or what you could save. You know, it was a bad wreck in Pocono a couple of years ago where a guy got his bell wrong, and it wasn't even in a NASCAR, it was an ARCA. And he got his bell wrong, and I went over there and I noticed something that I thought was pretty important that might need to be brought to attention. And I mentioned it to somebody because it's a safety factor. I mean, you don't want to see these guys get hurt. You don't want to see someone get hurt and not say anything and then hurt somebody else because they're not 100% too.
Yeah.
So it's like, you don't want to open your mouth sometimes, but at the same time, you know, it's for the better. Mm-hmm. You got to do, like I said from the beginning, you got to do what's best for these guys. And you got to understand that what you think is best is not always what's best. And you got to be open to everybody else's deal too. And you got to keep an open mind and keep these things as safe as they can is what it comes down to. And I hope these guys, I hope the men that put their lives on the line and do what they do, this dangerous job that they got, I hope they understand that what NASCAR does and what the guys do that work for them to make them safe. I hope they understand that it's all for the better, like everybody's out for them to keep them safe while they're doing their best to make us winners, So it's a fun deal.
So the dirty secret about interior guys and what interior guys have to do with, these guys are in race cars for hours at a time, and maybe they've had a little bit too much water to drink before the race. Or maybe they got a little bit of a spell of the flu. Have you ever ran into a messy situation inside the race car?
Oh, don't jinx me now.
Knock on wood.
Yeah, let's go ahead, knock on that one. 9 years. I've been lucky. I have been lucky.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some guys will go to the bathroom in the car every day, every race.
Every race.
Some guys won't do it. Yeah. Oh, I've heard stories. I mean, I haven't seen it, but yeah, I've heard stories about some guys who just go to the bathroom, relieve themselves. I mean, you're sitting in the car for 3 hours. I mean, you got to hydrate yourself.
Yeah.
It's hot.
Now,
I'm not going to say, I'm not going to enjoy it if I got to deal with it. But yeah, it would be my job to deal with it if it did happen. And I'm lucky enough that it has not happened yet. And I'd like to keep that streak alive.
Well, hopefully I don't jinx you.
And I think honestly, part of that, I don't know. I mean, if you were sitting in a car, would you be thinking about whether you want it on you, or would you thinking about whether the guy wants it on him? You know what I mean? Like where would your mind be if you were in the car? Would you not want it on you, or would you not want the other guy to clean it up?
Well, with the stories that I had heard, we were talking about the heat in the race car. That floorboard gets hot. And I've heard stories of guys using the bathroom on themselves and that floor pan being so hot that it steams the liquid and it burns the bottom of their legs. So they're getting burned with their own urine in the race car.
Yeah.
So
that's possible. I mean, you could have a liquid in the seat that could get so hot they could just about boil them. But now that they got the inserts in the seats, they're sitting elevated off the aluminum seat itself.
Oh yeah, so it kind of soaks it up.
It helps them up a little bit, where they're above it. But yeah, that those temperatures can get hot enough to where it can heat that liquid to get them pretty hot in there. They will get hot, man.
Yeah, but even not like that. Like if they take like a bottle of water and like dump on themselves, it'll do the same thing.
Yeah. I mean, it's a thin line. It's a thin line. It gets hot inside these cars. I keep saying it gets hot.
What's the hottest that you've seen one of those little sensors?
Are the ones on the car?
Yeah. The ones that you've put down on the floorboard. You remember how hot that got?
No, I'd say we're up to... I've seen ones under the dash that are about 150, right around that range. The ones by the pedals, they get a little bit hotter than that.
That's warm.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll get hot.
That's real
It'll
warm.
get hot. I mean, it won't get as hot as a gear or brakes will, but a gear or brakes are made out of metal. Drivers are made out of skin.
Yeah.
So it gets pretty hot in there. I mean, you can see the thermometers during the race on the side of the seat that some drivers will have that'll say 130, 140 degrees. So if it's that hot up by their
like
head,
air temp,
where the windows are and stuff, and their air, and their head, that's one thing. But if you put it down on the floor where the heat's trapped, and the motor and the transmission and all that heat is, it's a whole different animal.
So you're also in charge of putting like the fire extinguisher system inside, right?
Yeah.
So when that's set up, how does that go off? Like, okay.
Well,
when you set it up, how is it set up? Not how does it go off? I mean, get into how it goes off later, but how does it go down, I guess you could say?
Well, you got 2 fire bottles in the car. You got a 5-pound and a 10-pound bottle. Both have their own certification as far as how many times you can refill them or recertify them. They all date out after a certain amount of years, and you have to keep them up and inspect it like you would a fire bottle in a shop. So just for OSHA or whatever, you have to do it in the car too. The 10-pound bottle is the one that goes to the fuel cell, and that's got a little mercury ball deal in it, where if it gets hot in there, it'll blow off and try to put out a fire in the fuel cell, which you don't see much of. Thank God. You know, all that fuel back there. The other one's an actual smaller bottle inside the car. It's got a pull pin on it, where the driver will pull the pin, and it's like almost like a ripcord handle type of deal, where they'll pull that and it'll let off inside the car, and it'll, you know, starve the fire and help them out. So that's what we work with as far as the interior fire bottles go. And
how messy does that get?
That's pretty messy. And I'm not saying that from experience. My first year.
Again, knock on wood.
Yeah, no, I'm not letting it happen. I'm not even knocking on wood. I'm not letting it happen.
Oh, okay.
I'm not letting it happen. If it happens, it's because it broke. It's not because of me. I promised myself my first year in Phoenix in 2009 that I would never set one of them fire bottles off. And it was when we were working in our pit stall. We were set up because in the truck series, you have your car set up. Your truck is set up in the pit stall, and your toolbox is behind the wall instead of at a truck or in a garage. That's where you work. And then the inspection line was behind our pit stall, behind the wall, behind our pit stall. And there was an unfortunate guy that was working on another truck that was sitting in the inspection line. And I just happened to be looking over there, and I saw that interior of that truck fill up with smoke and him come out gasping for air. And after seeing that, and wishing that never happens to me, I made it a point to say that I'm not going to let that happen to me. And but it does happen, because I watched somebody else I work with do it once.
Gosh,
probably about a year later, and he came out of the truck, jumping out of the truck like he was on fire, just trying to gasp for air. And I'm not saying it's that bad where it starves the oxygen, but when you're unexpecting it and something like that goes off, it's not fun. It's not fun.
I mean, like, what would the process be if even cleaning that out? Because that was before the race.
Yeah. I don't think that guy was too worried about cleaning it out, to be honest with you.
He probably wasn't the one that's cleaning it out anyway. Yeah.
So, yeah, you try your best not to make things like that happen. I mean, if you cross your T's and dot your lowercase J's, you try to make sure stuff like that doesn't happen. So, I've done all right to this point to make sure stuff like that doesn't happen, I'd imagine. But I've seen some unfortunate stuff happen. Sometimes you come down pit road and you got a little bit of fire, and those firemen, as happy as I am that they are there, sometimes they're a little overzealous with their fire extinguishers.
Yep.
Well, they'll go ahead and shoot the car with the fire extinguisher, and that makes an unbelievable mess. Unbelievable mess. And sometimes these fires put themselves out. They don't know it. Yeah. They're trained to put out the fire. But sometimes there's a fire that's not really a fire. And,
yeah, I've seen...
and it makes a fantastic mess.
I've seen some where the crew guys or the mechanics are like, no, don't. It's like, it's going to go out. It's just brake dust, or it's, it's just oil. Yep. It's just rubber on the headers. Like, it's fine. Like, it's not going to burn the car down.
I've seen guys swat the hose out of the guy's hand. Like, no, don't do it. But then again, you got unfortunate times like Richmond a couple years ago where...
Oh, yeah.
Where you need those guys there.
There was a fire on pit road this weekend, the 41.
Yep.
They were on the left side, going on with the new tires, and the rear tire changer, there's a spark somehow. I mean, you don't know.
Metal to metal.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. It's metal to metal. You don't know if it was, he missed. You don't know if it was a spark plug, a lug nut. Jesus. A lug nut sparking. There we go. A lug nut sparking. That caused it, because all it takes is just one little spark and poof, and just a little bit of gas on the ground. A little bit of gas spreads a big area, and it'll go up quick, and they did.
That's unreal. You got to think about how fast these cans that they're holding, putting fuel in the car, they hold 12 and a half, 13 gallons. I mean, right about 12.6 as usual. I don't know. I haven't weighed one in a while, but I'm sure that's right around what it is. Those cans, I mean, you got to think they're dumping that many gallons of fuel in a car in 2-3 seconds. Is that what it is?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So how long does it take you to put 12 gallons in your car at the pumps?
Oh, yeah.
It'll take you a couple of minutes. This is 2 to 3 seconds. So you got to think of how much fuel is coming out of those cans in a hurry. You get one little blip where those cans don't seal right away, or if the O-ring hangs up that doesn't close the can when they pull it out, that's a lot of fuel that's coming out. Mm-hmm. And you got a guy on the ground hitting metal on metal. And unfortunately, sometimes the worst things happen. And when they do, it's great to have the firemen and women on pit road in the back of every pit stall.
Absolutely.
Taking care of the people that are putting their lives on the line to deal with this. Because all in all, as much as these things don't go wrong, they very well could go wrong every week. Mm-hmm. And if they do, those guys are there to help everybody out. And the best thing we can do is let them do their job. I mean, and keep in mind, these men and women are sitting there and they're away from their family and they're sitting in this heat with the rest of us with their full fire suit on and their full Nomex suit underneath. It's like thermal underwear, their head socks and their helmets and their radios, and they're sitting there all racing one spot, making sure that everybody's safe. And it's not easy to do that in the middle of the summer when the heat index is 120 degrees. So even if they are a little bit excited with their fire extinguishers when it's a little fire, I mean, at the same time, if they're not there when it's a big one, it's a big deal. So
yeah, I always try to make it a point to go up and shake their hand, and ask them their name and, make them feel wanted and, kind of give them what we expect out of them. Hey, get off the hose. Hey, kind of stand over here, like being 1 foot further back isn't going to really change much, and also if I ever catch on fire, you're going to know it because I'm going to give you a big bear hug and you're going to put me out in self-defense. Yeah. So
fireball coming at me.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when we do the pace laps every week at the track, when we do the pace laps, I make sure I go, you got the fireman that's on the stall in front of us and you got the fireman that's in the back of our stall, firewoman, fireman, or whatever else. And I make sure I go up to either one of them, both of them, and I bring them both a water, and thank them for their service, because at the end of the day, they're there to make sure we're safe. So no matter what, I make sure I let them know that they got water, whatever they need, and they just go to the cooler and grab it, and no matter what, I mean, it's bigger than just us and what we got going on. And sometimes you got to be the guy to realize that. I mean, these people are out here and they might not want to be there, but they got to protect and serve. I mean, that's their job. That's what they're there for. And they're there for you. So they're just sitting there burning away, like heated up. And you got to take care of these people that are there to make sure that you're safe. And not everybody always thinks about that. But I mean, when people are willing to serve you, but don't know you, mm-hmm. you should be willing to give them whatever they need. Mm-hmm. And that goes for every aspect.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
So you just make sure that they're comfortable and safe, and then stop them if they get a little happy with their extinguishers, and let them go if they need it.
We were at Bristol. I think this was in 2015. I think it was. It was on the 32 car. We come down for a stop, jump out. I peg the right side, go to put a pump in it, and as soon as I'm putting a pump in it, something hits my left ankle. I thought it was like a car or something, or, like a piece of something that hit me. Holy shit, what was that? So the next thing that I do after getting the car up is I go in and I rip off the right rear tire. Well, as I pull that right rear tire, I try to look down to see what it was. It's a fire extinguisher. So what had happened was the fireman that was standing back by the rear tire changer and the rear tire carrier set the fire bottle down on the wall as soon as those guys jumped over. So they set it down on the wall, and the hose was to the right of that thing, and it was looped inside. So as they started to pull the hose out, it came up and it grabbed the tank and took it with them, and it slung all the way around and hit me in the side. And I remember looking down like, holy shit, where did that come from? And I
don't belong there.
Yeah, exactly. So we finish the stop and car takes off, and I walk over there and I pick it up, and it was a fire lady, and she was like so sorry, like, oh my gosh, like I don't know what happened. Sorry. I was like, it's okay. It's not a big deal. It could have been a really big deal, but here you go. Now just take a step back and get off the yellow thing. There's like just a little bit of space there. There's a little bit of give and take there that a lot of them don't know. And there's the excitement factor there also, because they're there, they're probably race fans themselves, and, it's a big deal.
You got to think, for us being in it as long as we are, I still get the excitement factor. I still get it. Mm-hmm. I still get the goosebumps. I still get the hair standing up. When we hear the national anthem and we're all standing there, and whether we got a flyover or not, or trucks driving down the front straightaway, or whatever happens, just that feeling. I'd say it probably happens more nighttime than it does daytime, just because I'm a nighttime football type of guy,
Yeah.
So, but but just that feeling, you get that. So just that excitement is there for me after 10 years. It's still there. Like I still get giddy over this stuff. And you got to imagine these people are sitting there watching. I mean, they got to feel it too. You know, they're trying to hone in their stuff like race fans. I mean, race fans are the reason we're doing this. We wouldn't be doing it if it wasn't for them. We lose our fans, we lose our jobs, our sport and what we love, you know, without them, we're not much. But, I mean, they get a little overexcited too sometimes. I mean, we had a race in Daytona one time where we were in the first pit stall.
Yeah.
I believe. And they wrecked on the front stretch.
Oh, yeah.
And one truck decided to come towards our pit stall.
Yeah, David Starr.
Yeah. I believe he backed it into the wall right in our pit stall.
Yeah, he did.
Now I was carrying rears on that truck. And my buddy to my right was changing. He was a big old fella. And when we saw that truck coming, our first reaction was to get off the wall, get out of the way, get out of Dodge. Well, sometimes when you get out of the way real quick and there's a race fan there that's not thinking and they're not where they're supposed to be, they might get run into.
Yeah.
So it's like you got to keep your wits about you. But I mean, that stuff does happen. I mean, you never know what's going to happen. No two are the same. No two are the same. Like anything could happen at the racetrack, whether it's the fireman, whether it's the pit crew, anybody. Everything's there to be safe, but it's what we do, we make as safe as we can, but it is not the safest profession in the world.
No, because
whether it be the pit crew, the mechanics,
it's race cars going 200 miles an hour. I mean, it's guys jumping off the wall in front of a car.
You're supposed to go as fast as you can without getting hurt.
Yeah,
I mean that's the whole point. Exactly. Whether it's the pit crew or the driver. I mean, I'll never forget Homestead. A couple years ago, it was the last race of the year. I was carrying rears. I picked up a pit job doing an Xfinity car, and it was after I believe I was still on a truck team then, and I picked up pit stops on an Xfinity car. Stayed the extra day to do it, and I was carrying rear tires, and my changer was someone I knew, was an acquaintance. I've pit with him before. I've known him for a while, and we had a pit stop, and the week before in the truck race in Texas, we had a pit stop, a similar deal where our truck was coming in while another truck was leaving behind us. And it was Parker Kligerman behind us. And when we jumped off the wall, Parker was leaving his pit stall and he almost got us. And I almost got sandwiched between the two trucks. So I was conscious of it. So the next week, or when we went to Homestead, a week later, it was the Xfinity race and the same situation was happening. I saw the car behind us and I knew he was going to try to pull out right as we were going to try to pull in. And I knew it, and before I could grab my changer, since I'm the carrier and I'm the last guy off the wall, you know, before I could grab him, he was already gone, and he didn't realize it, and I was conscious of it, so I waited at the wall, and right as I waited at the wall, he made his turn around the car, and sure as crap, the car behind us, I believe it was Logano driving it, ran right over his foot and twisted his foot around and kind of threw him out in the pit road a little bit. And we didn't know it at the time, but on the spot, I guess the foot was broken in a couple spots, but I mean, I helped him get back towards where he's supposed to be, finished the stop, hobbled around the car, did the other side, got back to the wall, and just sat on the wall. And, I mean, you never know what's going to happen. He broke his foot in a couple places, and it's just horrible. It's so reckless, but it's controlled chaos, you know? So everything from the firemen to the cars to the pit stops to the people to the drivers to the inside of the car to the track, the way the tracks are set up now with the walls. I mean, it's just choreographed chaos. That's the best way you could say it. Yeah,
I mean, I've had my ups and downs.
Yeah. You went up and then you went down.
Yeah, I've had that. I've had my jack catch underneath the car, and the car run over it and spit it back out into the leg of my rear tire carrier. Ooh. And
have we touched on the fact that we pit together?
I think everyone's kind of got that hint by now. If they haven't, yeah. Yeah, me and you used to pit together for a long time.
Yeah.
But
good times.
Were you on that deal with me when we did that?
Good times, Brooksy.
Yeah. Chris is going to be on here soon. Yeah.
You might want to
I told him about the show and he really got excited about it.
Maybe we could talk to the one in Richmond and see if he could put his experience on what happened with that whole safety with the fireman fire. I could talk to him and see if he wants to come in and discuss that.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
See if he wants to give his bird's eye view.
Yeah, he's definitely a guest that I've wanted to have on. He could definitely tell the story because firsthand story. Yeah, he would be a great guest. He's a super nice guy. Like it couldn't have happened to a better guy. Always see him in the garage. He always waves, hey, how are you? But yeah, he's still doing it and still getting after it. Didn't let him affect him that bad. And I mean, he's switched to the front since then, to kind of get away from that end of the car. But, he really bounced back from that. So,
it's a rough deal, man. This racing deal is a rough deal. Trying to keep the driver as safe as we can, and the rest of us just watch out and hang on, I guess.
Yeah.
We're not the ones going 200. We're the ones with the 3,400-pound car coming at us, So it's safety first. Safety first for everybody. Safety first, then win.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way I look at it. I mean, you don't go to the racetrack to lose. I mean, I don't care. Obviously, everybody that watches NASCAR knows that there's certain teams that are the elite and certain teams that are just getting to the racetrack. I mean, you don't have to be a big race fan to know that. Some teams struggle to get to the racetrack. They don't have the resources. They don't have the finances. But no matter what, those people that work on those teams, they want to win. Like, they don't just go to work to go to work. They don't go to work to lose. They still want to win, even though they might not have that chance as well as other people do. So everybody just wants to go out there and win, but at the same time, safety first should always be the first thing. Yeah. And as far as touching back on being an interior guy in the sport, I mean, that's just the most important part. There's nothing around it.
Mm-hmm. I mean, they say baseball is the game of failure. Racing, I think, is the game of failure, because you can go years and not win nothing.
Cherish.
Like I've never won anything in a NASCAR series. I mean, I've won the ARCA races and the Snowball Derby, but I've never won a NASCAR race.
Cherish every bit of it. I'll tell you what.
You always got to celebrate like it's going to be your last one, because it might be your last one.
I got my first win 3 years ago, my first year on the team I'm on now. And I got to tell you, it was the most incredible feeling. Just about the most incredible feeling ever. You guys could take this how you want it, but I'll put it right up there with being at a Yankees playoff win. All right, they're out, I know, but I had to throw that in there. But no, I mean, winning a race is it's just unbelievable what it takes to get to a racetrack, let alone to win a race against so many other competitors that are just, I mean, they're just incredible. I mean, it takes skill and luck to win races. I mean, you could be the best team out there. It doesn't mean you're going to win. And there's teams that have proved that time and time again. So anytime you can get a win, you got to cherish it every bit you can. And my first win was 3 years ago now in Las Vegas, and I will never forget that day until the day I die.
Bling, bling,
and I was,
bling, bling, bling,
yeah,
bling, bling, bling.
I'll never forget that week till the day I die either. And the second one was Charlotte a couple months later, and that was the last one I've had, and those are my 2 wins in this sport. And I got to be honest with you, the feeling I got from both of them, it brought me right back to that first race in Pocono in 2001, where I stood up for about, I'm telling you, it had to be 20 laps at least at Pocono. And it's just tears of joy. I don't remember ever in my life ever experiencing tears of joy. Like, I've been happy before. I've been excited. I've been unbelievably happy. But I don't think I've ever experienced to the point where you get so happy, you get choked up and you really get that tears of joy that people talk about. Okay. And the first time I can remember is Pocono in 2001, and the second time is a win in Vegas. And it's unbelievable. And I can't wait till the next one. And I hope we could bring our team to victory lane here in Texas in another week, and hopefully Phoenix and Homestead after that. Mm-hmm. I hope the rest of our guys can too, but I'd rather see us finish ahead of them.
You're a little partial. That's okay.
You got to stick with what you know.
I've already warned the guys on my team that if we were to win a race, that I will be sobbing uncontrollably.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Sobbing uncontrollably, like can't breathe.
This lifestyle we have, this career, this hobby. I mean, it's a hobby, it's a career, it's a lifestyle. It's everything. It consumes you. A lot of people don't have time for families or lose families because of it. But it's so precious. It's unbelievable. At any given second, it could be over. And it doesn't matter how good you are. It doesn't matter who you know. If someone decides that your time is up in this sport, you are out just as fast as you got in. And it's so precious, it's unbelievable. So when you could bring home a trophy, it means that much more, because tomorrow in this sport is not guaranteed. It's not like I said earlier, you could teach anybody how to build a race car, but you can't teach attitude. And even though your attitude and then your skill get you there and keep you there, it's not guaranteed that it's going to be there the next day. And then at the same time, besides the sport itself, life itself is precious, and we saw that this weekend with the Furniture Row boys and their unbelievable loss that I'm sorry to hear about. Prayers go out to all their families. But everything about it is so precious. You got to cherish every bit of it as much as you can.
That was such a crazy, like, I found out when we landed, like they really didn't tell anybody, and rightly so, because it happened the night before the race. And to really not to go into too much detail, but I knew Jim from being at the racetrack. I knew Jim from when I was running tires, recovering from my injury. I knew him just passing through the garage. Like when we would run tires during the race, we would race back to Champion, and if he was going one way and I went the other way, like we would try to run up in front of the other person and cut him off. So it's like, even like that's the racing in all of us, that we're even racing, pushing tire carts through the garage.
Yeah.
Like you're
always racing.
Yeah, you're always
racing something.
You're always
racing to the gas pumps to get more gas.
Oh yeah,
racing to return your tires and get the next ones.
Yeah, exactly. It's always a race, and I remember that. Or I would just be walking and he'd be up in front of me and he'd just keep fading over. Slowly getting in front of me, and then he'd turn around and smile. But
it's just precious, man. It's a family. I mean, we all want to beat each other, and it's the most competitive thing ever. But it's a family. I mean, it's a community, it's a family.
It's 1,000+ people, but it might as well be a high school class of 20. Like, everything about everyone. Their family. Their story. Everything about everybody. And when something happens to someone, it is legitimately a member of the family gone.
Yeah. It's everything about it's precious. Everything about the people.
So if you were to tell someone who was trying to get into racing, say that, hey man, I want to get into NASCAR, what would you tell them?
I think I already touched on it. I mean, like I said, I came from building houses. I built waterfront houses. I've been going to jobs with my old man since I was probably about 8 years old. And lucky for me, I'm a little bit older now, so there was no technology when I was a kid, which meant when I went with my old man to his job, I got to watch him. I got to ask questions. I got to look and not put my face in a tablet or a phone, Mm-hmm. So it's like I built houses, and I was with him all that time. I wasn't into racing, so I started from nowhere at mid-20s, started from nowhere and jumped into a sport that people have been in their whole lives. Generations beyond generations have done it. And somehow I jumped in and I got accepted being an outsider that's not even from the area. And I believe it's all because, number one, drive, persistence, and attitude. I mean, that's all I could say. If you want to get in, first things first, you do not know it all. That's the first things first. You do not know it all. And if you didn't get that, you should just listen and say, you do not know it all. That's the most important part. If you come in thinking you know more than everybody else about this deal, that's the first way to not know anything, because you're going to get spit right back out. Now, don't get me wrong. There's some arrogance in this sport. But if you walk in thinking you know more than the guy next to you, that's the fastest way to get out of it. And the fact that I didn't know anything coming in and all I wanted to do was learn, and 9 years later, I still ask people for the way that they do it, just so I know every way to do it, because pride's not a big thing. It's about knowing every way and seeing every angle. That way, if you get hit with a situation you haven't gotten hit with, oh, that guy's method will get me through it. If you stay open to everything and stay driven and just set your pride aside and just have a good attitude about it, you'll make it. I mean, it depends how bad you want it.
You even got to be careful how you ask why things work the way that they work, because some guys will take that the wrong way. Like if they were saying, okay, you need to install this way, and if you say, why, like not questioning them why you're doing it that way, but questioning them, why are you doing it this way?
Yeah, that's like the psychiatrist end of the sport. You got to figure people out and how they want to be asked questions and how you can ask certain people questions.
Mm-hmm.
And when you got a little bit of a language barrier, like North and South, like I got going, where my presentation or my voice or the way I talk or the way I act compared to Southerners, and that difference that we do have, whether we like it or not, or whether we don't see anymore because I'm down here for this long, it's still there. I mean, if you could work around that and see that people don't communicate the same way as you because you're not from the same area, that's a big barrier too. So you got to be open to everything. You got to understand that the way someone says something, the way you take it is not the way that they mean it, and that was one of the biggest adaptations I had to make to understand it too, because I seem more aggressive because of my demeanor, the way I talk or the way I act or present myself compared to some people down here. And that's a turn off to people, it's people take it the wrong way. I'm an asshole because of that. That's just the way it is. I mean, but that's not the truth. And anybody that knows me after meeting me knows that that's not the truth. And it's just, you got to be open to everything. You got to want it. You got to be willing to give everything you got for it, because if you're not, the next guy behind you wants it more than you do. And it's just the same way as any other professional sport, and that's what we are. We're a professional sport. We're professional athletes, whether we're mechanics, pit crew, or anything. You're part of something professional, and it's a small percentage of the population. Someone wants it, and someone wants it more than you. And if you start getting old and comfortable, there's a young guy that's coming to get it. So you better stay driven, and you better stay hungry, or else you're going to lose it. And that's the way it should start in your career, and that's the way it should end in your career. And if you don't have that from day one to the end, then you might as well go sit at a desk and push papers. That's the way I look at it. I mean, right?
I say we go ahead and end this on that. That's good. Yeah. Really good words of wisdom there.
Can I drop your mic? Can you drop this arm?
Just hit it, and there you go. There you go. I know that you're really not big into social media or anything. I mean, I know you don't have an Instagram or a Twitter or anything like that.
Insta Twitter? What'd you say?
So,
I told you, man, I'm old school. I'm older. I didn't have social media when I grew up.
Yeah, so as far as
play in the dirt and eat rocks,
you need to at least get Instagram. Instagram's the way to go.
Right.
You need to create one. But yeah, thanks for coming on, man. I mean, I put out the bat signal, and here you are. So
my pleasure. It was a good time.
Hopefully David does good on his midterms, and we got I hate saying it, but we got a pretty good guest coming up. Not going to give out any more information than that, but we got a pretty good one coming. Be sure to check out youngandpruitt.com for all the previous episodes. If you're listening to this from the website, you can listen to us also on iTunes. We might start branching out into different platforms here in the next week or two, but be sure to subscribe, rate, and review on the iTunes, because if you do that helps us be seen by more people. The more ratings and reviews that we get, the more people see us when it pops up. So that would be a big favor to us. You can also find me at JackmanZack on Twitter and Instagram. But yeah, hey man, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, been my pleasure.
So, all right, this is the Young and Pruitt podcast. See ya.